The ship called Aurora Dawn flew through the darkness of space, its engines glowing blue against the black. Inside, Commander Alan Wright looked at the main screen with a tight feeling in his chest. This was the moment all of humanity had waited for. First contact with aliens who called themselves the Xenorians. "All systems ready, Commander," said Jack Peters from his pilot seat. "We are approaching the meeting point." Alan nodded. "Keep us steady. Remember what we talked about. No sudden moves." Dr. Lisa Campbell stood beside Alan, her hands gripping a data tablet so hard her knuckles turned white. She had spent years studying possible alien languages, and now she would finally test her theories. "Nervous?" asked Frank Martinez, coming to stand on her other side. The cultural specialist had a calm smile that helped relax the crew. "Terrified," Lisa admitted. "What if I can't understand them at all?" Frank patted her shoulder. "That's why we have the computer translation system. You're not alone in this." The ship's computer beeped, and everyone fell silent. A large shape appeared in the distance. The Xenorian ship was at least 5 times bigger than the Aurora Dawn, shaped like a perfect oval with strange glowing patterns on its surface. "They're hailing us," said Susan Kelly, the communications officer. Her voice shook slightly. Alan straightened his uniform. On screen, the main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The Xenorian had pale blue skin, large purple eyes, and no visible nose. Its mouth was small and perfectly round. When it spoke, the words came through the translation system with only a slight delay. "Humans of Earth. We are the Xenorians. We welcome you to galactic society, young ones." Alan stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and all humans, we thank you for this welcome. We are honored to meet you." The Xenorian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes. We have been observing your species for some time. Your recent achievement of faster-than-light travel has qualified you for official contact." "Barely." Lisa frowned at the tone. There was something dismissive in how the alien spoke. Alan continued smoothly. "We look forward to learning from your civilization. Our ship carries representatives from Earth's scientific, cultural, and diplomatic communities." The Xenorian made a sound that the translator couldn't process, but it sounded like a laugh. "How quaint. You believe you have things to offer." Most young species go through this phase of overconfidence. Frank stepped forward. "If I may ask, how many other species have you welcomed to the galactic community?" 17 major civilizations make up our alliance. Humans will be the 18th, though certainly the least advanced. 3 months later, Alan sat in the small building that served as Earth's embassy on Zenora Prime. He rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the report in front of him. Relations with the Xenorians were not going well. Lisa burst into the room without knocking. "They did it again." I was trying to explain our linguistic development, and Ambassador Krill laughed in my face. He said our language was adorably primitive, and that we should be grateful they're allowing us to learn their superior communication methods. Frank looked up from his own work. "Same thing in the cultural exchange. They treat our art and music like children's drawings to be put on a refrigerator." Alan sighed. "The science team reports similar problems. The Xenorians keep calling our technology cute and a good start for such young minds. I'm starting to think they invited us here." "Just to make fun of us," Lisa said, dropping into a chair. Frank shook his head. "There's something else going on. Have you noticed how they never talk about their own history? Everything is about their current achievements, never about how they got there." Lisa's eyes lit up. "You're right. And they've restricted access to certain parts of their capital city. The older sections are completely off limits to humans." Alan leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure," Frank said slowly. "But yesterday I saw something interesting. I was at that building they call the Hall of Knowledge, and I noticed the designs on the oldest walls. They had symbols that looked almost familiar." Lisa pulled up her tablet. "Show me." Frank drew some simple shapes. Curved lines that connected in patterns that seemed to flow together. Lisa gasped. That looks like proto-writing, similar to some very ancient human scripts. Exactly what I thought, Frank said. But when I asked my Zenorian guide about it, he changed the subject immediately and moved me to another area. Alan frowned. So, they're hiding something about their past? I think we need to find out what, Lisa said. Permission to do some unauthorized research, Commander? Alan hesitated. The Zenorians already barely tolerate us. If they catch you snooping... We'll be careful, Frank promised. But something tells me their attitude toward us is connected to whatever they're hiding. 2 weeks later, Lisa slipped through a service entrance into the restricted archives of the Zenorian Grand Library. Frank had created a distraction in the main hall, giving her 15 minutes at most. The room was dark and filled with strange objects. Some looked like books made of a metal-like material, others like crystals with light swirling inside them. Lisa moved carefully, scanning everything with her hidden device. In the back corner, she found what looked like stone tablets covered in writing. The symbols were nothing like modern Zenorian language, but something about them made her heart beat faster. She took pictures quickly, then froze as she heard voices approaching. Hiding behind a large display case, she held her breath as 2 Zenorians entered. The humans are becoming too curious, one said. They ask too many questions about the old ways. They will learn nothing, the other replied. The ancient language has been forgotten for thousands of years. No one can read it anymore. Still, the High Council is concerned. If they were to find the truth about our beginnings, impossible. How could primitive humans possibly understand what even we have? Lost? After they left, Lisa made her way back to the embassy, her mind racing. Back in their secure room, she showed her findings to Alan and Frank. This writing, she said, pointing to her scans, has elements that look like ancient Earth languages. Not exactly the same, but similar enough that I might be able to start decoding it with our linguistic programs. Alan studied the images. They said no one can read this anymore? Their own ancient language? Frank nodded slowly. Think about it. They laugh at us for being young. But what if they've lost touch with their own past? What if these similarities aren't coincidence? Lisa's eyes were bright with excitement. What if both our species share some kind of connection we don't understand yet? Alan looked at both of them. Find out more, but be extremely careful. If you're right, the Zenorians might not like what you discover. As Lisa began working to decode the ancient symbols, none of them realized they had just taken the first step toward a discovery that would shake the foundations of both human and Zenorian understanding of their place in the universe. Lisa had not slept properly for a week. Her room in the human embassy on Zenora Prime was now covered with notes, pictures, and charts. She had connected her computer to the wall screen, and strange symbols scrolled across it as her program tried to find patterns. Frank knocked on her door and entered with 2 cups of coffee. "You look terrible," he said, handing her a cup. "Thanks," Lisa said with a tired smile. She took a long drink. "But I think I'm making progress. Look at this." She pointed to a section of symbols from the stone tablets she had photographed. These repeating patterns here look like they might be a form of verb conjugation. And if I'm right, this group of symbols is talking about some kind of journey. Frank leaned closer. A journey by the Zenorians? Maybe. Or maybe by whoever created these tablets. Lisa rubbed her eyes. The strangest thing is that some of these patterns remind me of very old Earth languages, like they share a common root. Alan walked in and closed the door carefully behind him. The Zenorians are getting suspicious. Ambassador Creel asked me directly today what our research team was working on. What did you tell him? Frank asked. That we're studying their current language to improve our translation systems. Alan looked at Lisa's wall of work. But I don't think he believed me. We need to speed this up or find another way to get information. Lisa stood up and stretched. I need to see more examples of this writing. The library samples aren't enough. Frank's face brightened. I might know where to look. Yesterday I was talking to a junior Zenorian scientist named Vril. He mentioned old temples outside the city that aren't used anymore. He said they're covered in the marks of the ancients. Did he know what the marks meant? Lisa asked eagerly. No. He said modern Zenorians consider them just decorations from a less advanced time. Most don't care about them. Alan thought for a moment. We're allowed to travel within 50 miles of the city for cultural exploration. Could we reach one of these temples without breaking the rules? Frank nodded. Vril said the closest one is about 40 miles east. We could take one of our small transport vehicles. Let's go tomorrow, Lisa said. I need more samples if we're going to break this code. The next day, the three humans drove east from the city in a small vehicle. The Zenorian landscape was beautiful, but strange, with purple grass-like plants and tall, thin trees that swayed, even when there was no wind. Up ahead, Frank said, pointing to a hill. On top stood a round building made of white stone. It looked very different from the sleek, modern Zenorian architecture in the city. They parked at the bottom of the hill and walked up. No Zenorians were around. The temple was clearly abandoned, with parts of its roof fallen in. Look at the entrance, Lisa whispered in awe. The doorway was covered in the same kind of symbols she had been studying. Frank took out his scanner and began recording everything. This is incredible. The whole building is like a giant text. They walked inside carefully. The floor was covered in dust and light came through holes in the ceiling. The walls were lined with more writing, and in the center of the room stood a large stone table. This looks like some kind of altar, Alan said, examining it without touching. And look at these grooves. They seem to channel something from the edges to the center. Lisa was barely listening. She walked slowly around the room, her scanner, recording every symbol. There's so much more here than in the library samples, and look at these. She pointed to a series of images carved between the text. These are pictures of story scenes. One carving showed tall figures giving something to smaller figures. Another showed the tall figures pointing to the sky. They look like they're teaching. The smaller ones, Frank said. Lisa nodded excitedly. And look at the smaller figures in this scene. They don't look like modern Zenorians. They look more, I don't know, different somehow. They spent hours recording everything in the temple. As the Zenorian sun began to set, casting an orange glow through the roof holes, Alan said they should head back. Wait, Lisa said, examining the center altar more closely. There's something different about these symbols. She brushed away dust from a circular pattern on the altar's surface. As her hand passed over the center, a soft blue light began to glow from within the stone. They all stepped back in surprise. What did you do? Alan asked. Nothing, I just touched it, Lisa said. The blue light grew brighter, and suddenly the grooves in the altar filled with glowing blue liquid that flowed toward the center. When all the channels were full, a beam of light shot up from the center and formed a floating image. Above the altar, it showed a star map. Is that our galaxy? Frank asked in wonder. The image zoomed in to show a spiral arm of the galaxy, then focused on two star systems that glowed brighter than the others. Lines connected them. I think those are Zenora and Earth, Lisa whispered. Then the image changed, to show tall, elegant beings with long limbs and large eyes. They didn't look like humans or Zenorians, but had features that seemed like a mix of both. The beings appeared to be traveling between the two star systems. Just as suddenly as it had appeared, the light show stopped, and the temple was dark again. They stood in silence for a moment. We need to get back and analyze what we just saw, Alan finally said. But I think we just found evidence that Earth and Zenora are connected somehow. As they drove back to the city, none of them noticed the small Zenorian surveillance drone that had been watching the temple. The next morning, Ambassador Krill stormed into the human embassy, flanked by Zenorian security officers. You have violated sacred ground, he shouted at Alan. Your exploration permits are revoked. You are confined to the embassy until further notice. After the Zenorians left, Alan called Lisa and Frank to his office. They know we went to the temple, he said grimly, but I don't think they know what we found. They called it sacred ground, Frank noted. But Vril told me those temples were abandoned and ignored. Someone cares about them, Lisa said. And they don't want us there. Alan looked out the window at the Zenorian guards now stationed outside. We're running out of time. Lisa, what have you learned from the temple recordings? Lisa pulled up her findings on her tablet. I've made a breakthrough. The language has patterns that match Proto-Indo-European structures from Earth. It's as if both our languages evolved from the same source. Those beings in the light show, Frank said. Could they be the common ancestors of both humans and Xenorians? Or visitors to both our worlds? Lisa suggested. Teachers or colonizers who influenced our development. Alan paced the room. Whatever the truth is, the Xenorians don't want us to know it. We need to figure this out before they send us home. I need more time with the language, Lisa said. I'm close to understanding enough to read those temple walls. You have 3 days, Alan said. That's when the next Earth supply ship arrives. If the Xenorians revoke our diplomatic status, we'll be on that ship home. Lisa worked without stopping. Food containers piled up on her desk as she fed recordings from the temple into her translation program. Frank brought her meals, and Alan kept the Xenorian officials busy with paperwork and questions that would buy them time. On the morning of the 3rd day, Lisa ran into Alan's office, her eyes wide with excitement. I've got it, she said, dropping her tablet on his desk. Not all of it, but enough to understand the basic message. Alan looked up from the diplomatic forms he was filling out. Tell me. The temple writings talk about visitors from the stars, beings called the Seeders who came to many worlds thousands of years ago. Lisa's words tumbled out quickly. They visited both Earth and Xenora, and they shared their knowledge and language with early humans and early Xenorians. Frank entered the room, closing the door behind him. That matches what I've pieced together from Xenorian mythology. Their oldest stories mention sky teachers who helped them build their first cities. Why would the Xenorians hide this? Alan asked. Lisa sat down heavily. Because according to the temple writings, the Seeders considered all their visited worlds equal parts of their legacy. But modern Xenorians believe they are special, chosen ones. The idea that humans were also visited by the same beings would make us equals. And they can't stand that thought, Frank finished. Alan looked at the clock on the wall. The Earth ship will be here in 6 hours. The Xenorians have already ordered us to prepare for departure. We can't leave now, Lisa said. Not when we're so close to understanding. We don't have a choice, Alan replied. Unless what? Frank asked. Alan's face showed he was thinking of a risky plan. Unless we force their hand. Lisa, how much of the language can you speak? Speak? Lisa looked surprised. I've been focused on reading it, but I could probably pronounce some key phrases based on the patterns I've identified. Good, Alan said. Here's what we're going to do. 5 hours later, Alan, Lisa, and Frank stood in the grand meeting hall of the Xenorian High Council. Ambassador, Krill had summoned them for a final meeting before their departure. The hall was impressive, with high ceilings and walls made of a material that seemed to shimmer like water. 5 senior Xenorians sat in tall chairs, looking down at the humans with expressions of mild amusement and contempt. Humans of Earth, Krill began in a formal tone. Your time on Xenora Prime has come to an end. Your behavior has been disappointing, but not unexpected from such a young species. Alan stepped forward. We wish to thank the Xenorian people for their hospitality. However, before we leave, we would like to address some discoveries we made during our stay. Krill's face showed annoyance. There is nothing to discuss. Your permission to study our culture has been revoked. Actually, Lisa said, stepping forward, we wanted to talk about the temples outside the city, the ones with writing from the time of the Seeders. The room went very quiet. The oldest Xenorian counselor, Velex, leaned forward slightly. What did you say? He asked, his voice cracking. Lisa took a deep breath and looked at her notes. Then she spoke several words in a language none of the humans had heard before. The sounds were strange, with clicks and tones that seemed to echo in the hall. The effect on the Xenorians was immediate and shocking. Krill stepped back as if struck. 2 of the counselors stood up in alarm. Velex's eyes grew wide and he gripped the arms of his chair. What is this trick? Krill demanded, his voice shaking slightly. How dare you mock our sacred sounds? Lisa, continued, speaking a full sentence now. The words seemed to hang in the air, powerful and ancient. Velix rose slowly from his chair. "Stop," he said, raising a hand. "Where did you learn these words, human?" Alan stepped forward. "Dr. Campbell is a linguist. She studied the writings in the abandoned temple east of the city." "Impossible," another counselor said. "No one can read the old tongue anymore. It was lost thousands of years ago." "Not lost," Frank said. "Just forgotten by the Xenorians. But on Earth, similar language structures continued to evolve. We kept parts of what you lost." Felix came down from his high chair and approached Lisa. Though he towered over her, there was no mockery in his eyes now, only wonder and confusion. "Say it again," he requested softly. Lisa repeated the phrase, and Velix closed his eyes, listening. "The words of the cedars," he whispered. "After all this time, Krill moved between them. This changes nothing. The humans must leave as planned." "It changes everything," Velix said firmly. He turned to the other counselors. "Don't you understand what this means? The old prophecies speak of the return of the cedar knowledge through those who remember the words." "Prophecies are for children," Krill scoffed. "These humans are trying to trick us into giving them more access to our world." Lisa looked directly at Velix. "We don't want to trick anyone. We want to understand our shared history. The temple showed us a star map connecting Earth and Zenora. It showed beings who might be ancestors to both our peoples." Velix's face showed conflict. "The sacred history says the cedars blessed only Zenora with their wisdom." "Your sacred history was changed," Frank said gently. "We found older writings that tell a different story." The council erupted in argument, some agreeing with Krill that the humans should leave immediately, others curious about what Lisa had discovered. Finally, Velix raised his hands for silence. "The humans will stay," he declared, "for one more cycle. They will share their translation work with our scholars, and we will see if there is truth in what they say." Krill started to protest, but Velix cut him off. "If they can speak the old tongue, then they have earned the right to be heard." As they left the council chamber, Krill stopped them in the hallway, his eyes cold. "You may have impressed old Velix with your tricks, but you have made a powerful enemy today," he warned. "There are many Xenorians who will not accept humans as equals no matter what language you claim to speak." After he left, Frank looked at Lisa and Alan. "Well, we bought ourselves some time, but now we're in the middle of what looks like a Xenorian political battle." Lisa nodded, looking worried. "And we still don't know the full story of what connects our worlds." "One thing at a time," Alan said. "Let's get back to the embassy and prepare everything we've learned for Velix's scholars. Our real work is just beginning." The next few days were busy. Velix sent 5 Xenorian scholars to work with Lisa. They brought old texts and records that had been kept secret from most Xenorians. Lisa shared her translation program and methods, and together they made fast progress. "It's amazing," Lisa told Alan and Frank one evening. "These Xenorian scholars have been trying to decode the old tongue for generations, but they were missing key pieces that we humans kept in our languages." Frank nodded. "And they're starting to warm up to us. Zlor actually laughed at my joke today." "Don't get too comfortable," Alan warned. "Krill and his supporters are still watching our every move. I've seen more security drones around the embassy." "That reminds me," Lisa said, lowering her voice. "Velix asked if we could meet him tonight at his private home. He said he has something important to show us that can't be seen at the council building." Alan frowned. "Could be a trap." "I don't think so," Lisa said. "The scholars trust us now. You should see how excited they get when we make a new translation breakthrough." "Fine," Alan decided. "But we all go together, and we tell the embassy staff where we're going." That night, they took a small transport to Velix's home outside the city. It was an old building, made of the same white stone as the temple they had visited. Velix met them at the door. "Thank you for coming," he said, bowing slightly. "Please follow me." He led them through the house to a room at the back. The walls were lined with old books and strange objects that looked like artifacts from a museum. "This is my private collection," Velix explained. "Things passed down in my family for generations. things that the current government would rather forget. He touched a panel on the wall and a hidden door slid open. Behind it was a small room with a single object in the center, a crystal sphere on a stone base. "The Seeing Stone," Velek said with reverence. "One of the few working cedar artifacts we still have." The sphere glowed softly with an inner blue light, similar to what they had seen at the temple. "The official history says this is just a religious object," Velek continued. "But those of us who study the old ways know it is much more. It is a record keeper, a device the cedars left to store their knowledge." Lisa stepped closer, fascinated. "How does it work?" "In the past, only certain priests could activate it. They had a gift for the old tongue. But as our language changed, that ability was lost." Velek looked at Lisa with meaning. "Now perhaps we can try again." Lisa looked nervous. "You want me to try to activate it?" Velek nodded. "Speak the words you learned from the temple." Lisa glanced at Alan, who nodded encouragement. She stepped up to the sphere and carefully spoke the phrases she had memorized. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blue light in the sphere grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her words. Suddenly, the light expanded, filling the room with a three-dimensional image. It showed the same tall beings they had seen in the temple projection, but now they could see more detail. The beings moved around what looked like a large ship. Stars swirled in the background. A voice spoke, using the same language Lisa had been learning. She listened intently, trying to translate in her head. "What is it saying?" Frank whispered. "Something about a journey," Lisa said slowly. "They left their home because it was dying. They searched for new worlds to seed with life. Earth and Zenora were two of those worlds." The image changed to show the beings arriving at different planets, including what looked like early Earth and Zenora. They were working with primitive versions of humans and Zenorians, teaching them, helping them build structures. "They lived among our ancestors for thousands of years," Lisa continued translating. "They taught us language, farming, building, but they couldn't stay forever." The image showed the tall beings leaving, some of them looking sad. Before they left, they stored their knowledge in special places, hoping that someday we would be ready to understand it all. The projection faded, and the room was quiet again. "This changes everything," Velek said softly. "The official history teaches that we Zenorians were specially chosen, superior to all other species. But this shows we were just one of many worlds visited by the Cedars, equal in their eyes," Frank said. Velek nodded slowly. "Equal." A loud crash from the front of the house made them all jump. Voices shouted, and heavy footsteps approached. "Security. Forces," Velek said, his face afraid. "Someone must have reported your visit." The door burst open, and armed Zenorian guards rushed in, led by Krill. "Arrest them all," Krill ordered. "The humans for stealing state secrets, and Velek for sharing them." "This is ridiculous," Alan protested as a guard grabbed his arms. "We're here as official guests of a council member." "The council has been temporarily dissolved," Krill said with a cold smile. "For security reasons. I am now acting as emergency director." "You can't do this," Velek said. "The other council members won't stand for it." "The other members are currently detained, just like you will be," Krill replied. He turned to look at the crystal sphere. "So this is the famous Seeing Stone. A dangerous relic spreading dangerous ideas." He reached for it, but Lisa stepped between him and the sphere. "Don't touch it," she said firmly. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Krill laughed. "A human telling me what I don't understand about my own planet's artifacts? Your species truly has no limits to its arrogance." Lisa began to speak in the old tongue, her voice growing louder. The words seemed to make the air vibrate. Krill stepped back, surprised. The guards looked uncertain, some of them lowering their weapons slightly. "What is she doing?" one guard asked. "Speaking nonsense to frighten you," Krill snapped. "Ignore it and arrest them." But Lisa continued, and the crystal sphere began to glow brighter than before. The blue light expanded again, but this time it formed a swirling cloud around Lisa. Krill's eyes widened. "Stop her!" A guard moved toward Lisa, but the light pushed him back. It grew to surround all three humans and Velix, like a protective shield. "This is why the Cedars left their knowledge," Lisa said, now speaking in normal language again. "Not for one species to claim superiority over others, but for all their children to share when they were ready." The light pulsed once more, then shot upward through the ceiling, forming a beam that could be seen for miles around. Krill backed away, his face showing fear for the first time. "What have you done?" Alan stepped forward, the light still shimmering around him. "I think she just called for help." The beam of blue light from Velix's house shot into the night sky above Zenora Prime. All across the city, Zenorians came out of their homes and looked up in wonder. The light pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. Inside the house, Krill and his guards had backed away from Lisa, Alan, Frank, and Velix, who were still surrounded by the protective glow. "What is happening?" Krill demanded, his voice shaking. "What have you activated?" Lisa herself looked surprised. "I'm not sure. I just spoke the words from the temple, asking for guidance." The crystal sphere in the center of the room began to float, rising until it hovered at eye level. Then it split open like a flower blooming. Inside was a smaller sphere that glowed even brighter. "A beacon," Velix whispered in awe. "The old texts mentioned this. It calls to other cedar sites across the planet." As if in answer, reports started, coming in on the guards' communication devices. Blue lights were appearing at ancient sites all over Zenora. The temples, long abandoned, were waking up. "Shut it down," Krill ordered, panic in his voice. "This disruption will cause chaos." "I don't think we can shut it down," Frank said, "and I don't think we should." Outside, they could hear the sounds of vehicles and voices. More people were gathering. Around Velix's house, one of the guards looked out the window. "Director Krill, the other council members are here, and hundreds of citizens." Krill's face showed conflict. His plan was falling apart. "Keep everyone out," he ordered. "It's too late for that," Alan said. "Whatever is happening here is bigger than all of us now." The inner sphere from the crystal began to project images onto the walls of the room. They showed maps of both Earth and Zenora, with certain points glowing bright blue. On Earth, the spots marked ancient sites like Stonehenge, the pyramids, and places in South America and Asia. On Zenora, they marked the temples and other structures unknown to the humans. "Connection points," Lisa said, understanding dawning on her face. "Places where the Cedars left their knowledge." The front door of the house opened and the other 4 council members walked in, followed by a crowd of Zenorian scholars and citizens. They stopped, staring at the glowing humans and the projections on the walls. "What is the meaning of this, Krill?" asked one of the counselors. "Why did you claim we were detained when we were simply at the evening meal?" Krill's authority was crumbling. "These humans have activated dangerous ancient technology. I was trying to protect our people." "By lying?" Velix asked. "Or by hiding the truth about our past?" The projections changed again, now showing the early history of both planets more clearly. The Cedars arriving, helping the primitive species develop, teaching them the same language, the same basic skills. "Look," said a Zenorian scholar, pointing to one image. "They're teaching both species the same writing system." "And the same building techniques," said another, as the projection showed similar structures being built on both worlds. Lisa stepped forward, the protective light still surrounding her. "The Cedars visited many worlds, including Earth and Zenora. They shared their knowledge equally with all the species they found. But over time, some of that knowledge was lost or forgotten. On Earth, we kept parts of their language alive in our oldest tongues," Frank added. "On Zenora, you preserved other parts of their legacy in your technology and architecture. Neither of us has the complete picture," Alan said. "But together we might be able to recover what was lost." The largest projection now showed a map of the galaxy, with dozens of worlds marked as visited by the Cedars. Earth and Zenora were just 2 among many. A community of worlds, Velix said softly. All children of the same teachers. Krill saw that he was losing control of the situation. In a desperate move, he drew a weapon and pointed it at the crystal sphere. I will not let these lies destroy everything we believe in. Before anyone could stop him, he fired. But the beam from his weapon hit the protective light and bounced back, striking the ceiling. Pieces of stone fell, and people scattered to avoid them. In the confusion, the inner sphere from the crystal rose higher and projected a final image. It showed the Cedars leaving a message, spoken in their language. Lisa listened carefully. They're saying that when their children were ready, when 2 or more of the seeded worlds could come together in peace and speak the old language again, the full knowledge of the Cedars would be revealed. The sphere descended, coming to rest, in front of Lisa and Alan. A compartment opened, revealing a small device inside. What is it? Alan asked. A data storage device, I think, Lisa said, but far more advanced than anything we have. Krill had been restrained by the guards, who now looked to the council for orders. The counselors looked at each other, then at the humans and the amazing technology around them. Perhaps, said the eldest counselor beside Velix, we have been wrong about humans, and about our own history. 1 year later, a new building stood on Zenora Prime. It was neither purely Zenorian nor purely human in design, but a blend of both styles. Inside, humans and Zenorians worked together, studying the vast database of knowledge the Cedars had left behind. Lisa stood at the main console, now fluent in both modern Zenorian and the old tongue. Next to her stood Velix and several other scholars from both worlds. The translation of the medical section is complete, she announced. The Cedars' healing technology was even more advanced than we thought. Frank entered the room, followed by a group of young Zenorians. The students are ready for today's history lesson, he said with a smile. In another part of the building, Alan sat with the Zenorian High Council and representatives from Earth. They were planning the first joint mission to visit another of the worlds the Cedars had contacted. The ship will be ready next month, a Zenorian engineer reported. Using the Cedar Drive technology, we can reach the Proxima system in just 12 days. And our linguistics team is prepared to help us communicate with whatever species we find there, added a human scientist. Outside the building, a monument had been erected. It showed a human hand and a Zenorian hand, together holding a sphere that represented the shared knowledge of the Cedars. Beneath it, words were carved in 3 languages: modern human, modern Zenorian, and the old tongue. The inscription read, "From many worlds, one future. The children of the Cedars united again, and beyond Zenora and Earth, across the vast reaches of space on other worlds the Cedars had visited long ago, other beacons were beginning to glow in response to the signal that had been sent. The reunion that the Cedars had hoped for was just beginning.